Hello lovelies, welcome back to another video. My name's Gemma and today I am going to run through all the books that I read in October. So now that I've remembered what month we're on, I am going to run this video how I've run sort of previous wrap-ups and do a little bit of stats in the beginning, and then I'll run through sort of smallish reviews for each of the books. So without any more waffle and the like, this month I read 9 books which totaled 2,839 pages, which was about sort of standard for me. I also DNF'd 2 books, so I'll talk about those in a bit as well. They're obviously not included in the page count. Format wise, it was an even split. I had 3 audio, 3 physical and 3 ebooks that I read this month. 3 of the books were by authors of colour, 2 were translated and 2 were non-fiction. So a pretty, pretty good mix in there. Star wise, I had 1 2-star read, 3 3-star reads, 4 4-star reads and 1 5-star read. So pretty much the whole diaspora, because I had 2 DNFs as well, and usually DNF is when it's likely to be a 1-star. I never give 1 stars because I'll DNF before I get there. So yeah, full range this month. I'm also going to put up this chart from Storygraph, which details the genres that I read. For the astute among you, you will know that this equals more than 9, and this is because Storygraph quite often will categorise a book into 2 categories. So, for example, it might be literary fiction and thriller, or sci-fi and historical fiction if it's sort of time travel, that sort of thing. So some of these will have had 2 genres associated with them, but it gives you an idea of what I was favouring this month. And so at the top, we've obviously got literary fiction. So 4 of the books I read were literary. 2 were focused on themes of race and 2 were contemporary. And then I had 1 for a lot of other genres, as you can read yourself. So yeah, so literary fiction, contemporary fiction and themes of race were sort of my predominant reads this month. Okay, so that's it for the stats. Let's get into the books. I am going to start with the 2 DNFs, just to get them out of the way. The first one was Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. So I pulled this out of my jar of intimidating reads, which is up there. Mug. It's a mug, it's not a jar. I don't know why I keep calling it a jar. And I pulled it out, I think, in my very first TBR game in July. I started reading it towards the end of August and I was still reading it in October. I gave it a bloody good go. I read 346 pages before I DNF'd this book. So this is odd. So you have it skips time. So you have a section that's in the 1800s, and then it skips forward to, I think it was in the 1930s. And then it skips forward and it skips forward, and you get a futuristic perspective as well. So it keeps skipping forward. And each of the stories are linked, though the link is really, really loose and tenuous and not pivotal to the story whatsoever. And you come all the way up to this futuristic perspective, and then it works backwards back through the timelines. So I was quite intrigued to see how the author pulled this all together, which is why I carried on for so long. But I started to get into the timelines that were going backwards, and I just didn't care. I'd sort of forgotten what had happened in their first section when we got to the second section. And it was reading short stories that didn't really have a conclusion or a point. And yeah, I got to 300 and whatever and decided that I didn't want to go to, it's 530 pages. So I was like, yeah, no, I don't want to do another nearly 200 pages of this. So I DNF'd it. And interestingly, I saw Nikki Everett Red Dot Reads review another David Mitchell book, which I think she DNF'd, was it last month? And she had similar thoughts. So I think David Mitchell is just not for me. This book was shortlisted for the Booker Prize, but to me it was a gimmick. He was trying to play with form, and I just didn't care because the story wasn't compelling enough for me to care. So yeah, that one, I bought this from a charity shop for 50p, so I haven't really missed out. It will go back to a charity shop now. And yeah, that was my thoughts on that one. The other one I'm going to DNF is The Divine Comedy by Dante. So I was reading this as part of the read-along that's been hosted by Kieran at KD Books and Ben at Doom Antidote. I did sit in on the live show for it, the live show for it. And they're both just much more intelligent than me and take a lot more from it. For me, this was like hard work. I was reading it's all written in verse, but it's blank verse, so it doesn't rhyme. It's like prose that's written in short lines. And it's got loads of bump on the bottom about what the hell Dante was talking about. But it was just like, I'd read the section and I'd go back and read the footnotes, and it was like being in a literature class, and maybe it would be interesting to study, but that's not why I read. And it wasn't interesting enough for me to continue. So I read up to Canto 12, 77 pages. And yeah, that one's going to go to a charity shop too. And it's in pretty much mint condition because, yeah, I only read 77 pages of it. You win some, you lose some, right? So the next book, I'm now going to go in order of the order that I read them. So the next book that I finished was My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. This was translated from the Italian. And here we're following two girls in childhood as they sort of grow into adolescence and adulthood. And it's their relationship with each other and just a coming of age story, really. I did leave a review for this on my Instagram. If anyone wants to check it out, my socials are always linked below. But this one just didn't really work for me. It had some good points and I should have really enjoyed it. So it had morally grey characters, particularly the friend Leila was a very interesting character, and the dynamic between the main character and Leila was interesting, but the main character was just wet and didn't really have anything about her. She was quite boring. The storyline was meh. It was absolutely more of a character driven book than a plot driven book, which isn't a problem in itself, but for me there was only these two characters. All the peripheral characters were just like in and out, and I couldn't keep track of who they were. And yeah, the main character just didn't do it for me. So I gave this 3 stars because there were some good points in it, but it just wasn't for me. And this is part of a quartet, so I won't be continuing reading these. Yeah, just a bit. On the other side of the spectrum, the next book I finished was The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemison. 5 stars. This book was outstanding. I did a standalone review for this, which you can check out, so I won't waffle on too much about it here. But yeah, this is a sort of, I suppose, fantasy sci-fi mix in a post-apocalyptic-ish world, or a world that goes through near post-apocalyptic events every few hundred years, every 10 years, it depends, but like it's a recurring event. You have 3 POVs at different time points, and yeah, I loved it. Like I say, I waffled on about it for like 15-20 minutes in my review, so feel free to go and check that out. But I absolutely loved this, and this is the first in a trilogy, the Broken Earth trilogy, so I'll be picking up the second one for that this month, so hopefully I will wrap that up for you at the end of November. The next book I finished was The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa. This is translated from the Japanese. Who translated it? By Stephen Snyder. Sorry, I'm not sure who translated My Brilliant Friend. I read it on audio, or listened to it on audio. So apologies, I don't know who the translator was for that one. But this was just lovely. So this really is a book about friendship, and we follow a woman who's a housekeeper who's asked to go and do sort of the cooking and cleaning for an elderly professor who has short-term memory loss. He can only remember, is it 80 minutes at a time, something like that. And so it's about how she deals with that and how their relationship develops. She also has a son that she brings along with her sometimes when she's cleaning, and it's about his relationship both with his mother and with the professor. And it was just really a heartwarming little hug of a book. I'm actually going to bung this towards my brother because the professor was a maths professor, and it's interesting because I've got lots of like mathsy bits in there, but it wasn't overdone. It just added to the character and the vibes of the book. So yeah, I would highly recommend this one. It was lovely, 4-star read. Next, I read The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandell. This book is very difficult to explain. You get lots of different characters' perspectives. I suppose the main perspective is the girl whose name I can't remember, and you get like the perspective of her brother and other people in her life as you go through. The Glass Hotel is somewhere that she works, but it's not a key point in the book. I struggled to tell you what this book was about, really, and so I gave it 2 stars because it was just a bit all over the shop, really. Yeah, I don't have any other thoughts. It's 2 stars. I didn't like it. I didn't feel like it had a plot, and I didn't feel like there was much character development because you kept skipping between different characters. So yeah, not for me. Next up, we have Mustard Seed by Leila Ibrahim. This is the second in the series. I can't remember the series name, so I'll pop it up. But I really enjoyed this. So obviously I'm not going to go too much into detail because it's the second in a series, but broadly we're following 2 characters in the sort of post-Civil War era of America in the southern states. And it's about 3 or 4 years after slavery has been abolished. And we follow these characters and we see how, though it's now illegal to have slaves, that isn't changing anything for the black people in, I think it's Virginia. So this book was really good because I got so angry. There were so many things in this book that I hadn't really thought about like post-slavery and how that affected the people of America, specifically the black people of America. And yeah, it was just horrific, and thinking about all the children that were effectively orphaned because their parents were just taken off, and it was heartbreaking, but it was so well executed. So we have the perspective of a white woman and the perspective of a black woman, and yeah, it's just interesting to see the different perspectives and how they interact with each other, and I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars. So there's one more in this series, Golden Poppies, which I'm hoping to pick up as well. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and for those who like historical fiction and learning more about what happened through that sort of Civil War era in America, then I would recommend picking these up. Next up, I finished Mouse by Art Speigleman. So this is a graphic novel. I have spoken about this a couple of times already, but this is a memoir. This is non-fiction, and it's told by Art Speigleman, who is the son of Vladek, and his time during the war in Poland and then in Auschwitz. And it was very well done. It's I'm going to show you some of the artwork. All of the Jews are portrayed as mice, and then see if I can find a good picture. The Germans are portrayed as cats, which was quite an interesting way of doing things. And there's other characters as well. So Polish non-Jews are pigs. So yeah, it's really interesting. I can't find a good picture of a Nazi. But yeah, I thought it was really well done. I really enjoyed it. It was a good read. I didn't, because it was a graphic novel, I'm quite new to graphic novels. This is the second one I've read. I read Persepolis earlier this year as well. I do find that I don't connect emotionally with the characters in the same way, but I still think it's a very good way of getting the point across. So, okay, there we go, there's a cat. So, yeah, so I really enjoyed this. I got this one out from my library, so that can go back now that I've wrapped up. But yeah, I would highly recommend, if you're not a graphic novel reader and you're not really interested in like superheroes and comics and stuff, but want to give graphic novels a go as a form of as a different form of literature, then this is a good one to go for. The next book I finished was another one on audio, and that was How We Fight for Our Lives by Saeed Jones. And this follows, and this is a memoir written and narrated by Saeed Jones, and it's his experience growing up as a young gay black man in America. And I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a good book. I gave it 3 stars, and the reason I gave it 3 stars was because earlier this year I read a very similar book, and that was All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, and I just thought that that book was so much better. I mean, it's difficult because it's people's experiences, you know. I know a lot of people don't rate non-fiction, but I just felt that All Boys Aren't Blue was better written, and I connected more with him as a character, whereas Saeed Jones, it was fine, it was interesting, there were interesting points in it, but it just wasn't, it didn't hold a candle really to the Johnson book. So that's why I gave it 3 stars. Yeah, it was fine. Next, I finished What Lies Between Us by John Mars. This is a thriller, and yeah, in this one, you have the perspective of 2 women who live in the same house, but one of them is chained up in the attic. So they come together for like dinner, and then one of them's chained up back in the attic, and the other one goes off and lives her life. And it's sort of how that came to be and what happens subsequently. I won't tell you any more about the plot because obviously thriller, you don't really need to know anymore. I gave this 3 stars. It was compelling enough, but it was just a bit like, nah, okay. The ending didn't really set me on fire. I don't know if they were supposed to be twists, but they didn't feel very twisty. So yeah, it was fine. I expect I finished it quite recently, but I expect I will have forgotten about it in a few weeks. So yeah, ambivalent on that one, I would say. And the last book I finished this month was Where the Forest Meets the Stars by Glendy Vanderah. And in this, we're following a woman who is a scientific researcher. She studies birds, and she goes down to a little cottage in, where is she? Illinois, rural Illinois, and a girl just appears out of the woods in her pajamas, barefoot, and says that she is an alien, and that she's come down from her planet to witness 5 miracles and then she'll return. So I didn't know anything about this book going in, and I'm not going to tell you anything. So you don't know if this is a contemporary story and this girl is just making stuff up, or if this has magical realism elements and actually maybe this is like an E.T. kind of story where this girl will return to her planet after 5 miracles. But I really enjoyed it. It was just heartwarming, found family trope. There was some nice coverage of body positivity and dealing with depression in this, and it just gave me sort of warm feels, and I really enjoyed it. Was it the best written book I've ever read? No, but I gave it 4 stars because it gave me that emotional warm hug. I can't remember who I was watching Cece actually from Cece's reading journey the other day, and she was saying that she, like, 1 star is for emotional connection. So a lot of 5-star books for me are 5-star because I had an emotional connection to them. You give that last star for that. So this was, I suppose, a 3-star book, but because I emotionally connected to it, I've given it that emotional star. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was lovely. It's not a very long book, just 320-ish pages, but yeah, I really liked it. And if you just want that sort of like warm family feeling, then give this one a go. And that's it, guys. That's 9 books wrapped up in record time, plus 2 DNFs. So yeah, so those are the books I read this month. As I say, a bit of a mixed bag, but generally I did like what I read. So thank you all very much for listening. If you liked this video, please consider liking and subscribing. And I will be back with another video next week. Okay, cheers guys, bye.